Saddam Hussein's rise to power in 1979 marked the beginning of a reign defined by fear, brutality, and absolute control. Following the U.S. invasion, the hunt for this elusive leader captured the world's attention, and on December 13, 2003, that search reached its climax. Saddam Hussein's early life played a big role in shaping the person he became. He was born on April 28, 1937, in a small village near Tikrit, Iraq. His family was poor and his father left before he was born. Saddam was raised by his mother and older brother, who were strict and tough on him. This difficult upbringing instilled in him a sense of survival and a desire for power. As a kid, Saddam faced many hardships. He grew up during a time of political turmoil in Iraq, and the environment made him aware of the power struggles happening around him. At a young age, he became involved in politics, joining the Ba'ath Party, which focused on Arab nationalism and socialism. This involvement would set the stage for his future rise to power. In his teens, Saddam moved to Baghdad to live with his uncle, who was part of the Ba'ath Party. This move was crucial for his education and political development. He became more radicalized, learning about political ideology and gaining confidence in his abilities. By the time he was in his early 20s, he had risen through the ranks of the Ba'ath Party, showing a knack for manipulation and ruthlessness. These early experiences laid the groundwork for Saddam's authoritarian style of leadership. Saddam's rule in Iraq, beginning in 1979, was marked by an unyielding quest for regional dominance, political control, and the brutal suppression of dissent. Almost immediately, he set out to establish Iraq as a dominant power in the Middle East, adopting policies that would not only terrorize his people, but also draw Iraq into devastating conflicts with his neighbors. His relentless drive to solidify his power and influence led to catastrophic consequences, both domestically and internationally. In September 1980, Saddam saw an opportunity to expand Iraq's influence following the chaos of the Iranian Revolution. Iran was grappling with internal strife, and Saddam aimed to exploit this instability by launching an invasion. This move was not just about territory. It was a calculated attempt to establish Iraq as the dominant power in the region. What followed was the start of the Iran-Iraq War, an 8-year conflict that would turn into a brutal and bloody nightmare for both nations. Initially, Saddam's military strategy focused on quick, decisive victories. His forces advanced rapidly, capturing strategic cities and oil fields. However, they quickly met fierce resistance from Iranian troops who rallied under the banner of nationalism and religious fervor. As the war dragged on, what began as a hopeful campaign for Saddam turned into a protracted struggle that neither side was willing to back down from, leading to a catastrophic stalemate. Throughout the war, Saddam adopted increasingly brutal tactics that drew international condemnation. One of the most horrific aspects was the widespread use of chemical weapons. Iraqi forces deployed mustard gas and nerve agents against both Iranian soldiers and civilians. In towns close to the front lines, Iraqi planes dropped toxic gas, causing unimaginable suffering. Survivors recounted the chilling moments when clouds of poison swept over their communities, leaving people gasping for breath and writhing in pain. Many suffered horrific injuries, while others lost their lives, unable to escape the deadly vapors. The impact of these attacks was devastating and long-lasting. Survivors often faced chronic health issues, including respiratory problems and psychological trauma. The scars of the war were not just physical. Families were torn apart and entire communities were left devastated. The suffering extended far beyond the battlefield. As the years wore on, the war turned into a grueling stalemate. By 1988, both Iraq and Iran were exhausted, having lost over 1 million lives combined. Despite the staggering human and economic costs, Saddam managed to frame the conflict as a victory in Iraqi propaganda. He portrayed himself as a hero standing against Iran, using this narrative to bolster his regime and justify their further repression at home. The aftermath of the war left Iraq deeply scarred, with infrastructure in ruins and an economy shattered. The toll of the Iran-Iraq War laid the groundwork for Saddam's continued authoritarian rule. In the wake of such a devastating conflict, he cracked down on dissent, instilling a culture of fear that kept many Iraqis silent. The war not only reinforced Saddam's power, but also set the stage for future conflicts and upheaval in the region, leaving a legacy of violence and suffering that would haunt Iraq for decades to come. Within Iraq, Saddam's regime was equally ruthless, governed by fear, surveillance, and an elaborate network of loyalists who ensured that any dissent was swiftly crushed. The Ba'ath Party, through which Saddam ruled, permeated every aspect of Iraqi life, enforcing loyalty and eliminating opposition. Citizens were aware that any criticism, no matter how small or private, could lead to imprisonment, torture, or execution. Friends, neighbors, and even family members were often coerced into spying on one another, creating an atmosphere where people lived in constant fear of being denounced. Saddam's regime maintained this culture of terror through a range of brutal tactics. Political opponents, religious dissidents, and even perceived rivals within the Ba'ath Party were systematically targeted. Torture and executions were common in Iraq's infamous prisons, where detainees suffered under unimaginable conditions. Among the methods reportedly used were electric shocks, severe beatings, and psychological torture, all designed to break the spirit of those who dared to question Saddam's rule. The entire country was essentially held hostage by a government that silenced opposition through fear, ensuring that Saddam's authority went unchallenged. His iron-fisted approach led to a deeply fractured society, with individuals living in isolation and suspicion of each other. One of Saddam's most horrific acts was the Anfal campaign, a genocidal assault on Iraq's Kurdish population in the late 1980s. The Kurds, who had long sought autonomy in northern Iraq, were seen by Saddam as a significant threat in his centralized control. In response, Saddam launched a systematic campaign aimed at eradicating Kurdish identity, forcibly depopulating Kurdish areas, and using chemical weapons to terrorize and decimate communities. The atrocities committed during the Anfal campaign are among the darkest chapters of Saddam's rule. Poison gas attacks on towns like Halabja left thousands dead, with survivors describing scenes of unimaginable horror. As gas bombs fell, people ran in all directions, desperate to escape the lethal fumes. But many succumbed to the poison that choked the air. Entire families were wiped out in minutes, with corpses strewn in the streets, and those who survived were left traumatized and permanently scarred. This was not only an assault on individuals, but an attempt to annihilate an entire community's culture and way of life. Beyond chemical attacks, the Anfal campaign included mass executions, forced relocations, and the destruction of Kurdish villages. Men, women, and children were detained en masse, with thousands forcibly disappeared and never seen again. It is estimated that up to 100,000 Kurds were killed in this campaign. In August 1990, Saddam's ambition led him to order the invasion of Kuwait, a neighboring nation with vast oil reserves that Saddam believed would bolster Iraq's struggling economy. This bold move, however, triggered international condemnation and provoked a powerful response from the US-led coalition. Within months, Operation Desert Storm commenced, marking the beginning of the First Gulf War. Coalition forces quickly overwhelmed Iraqi troops, driving them out of Kuwait in a decisive military operation. Though Saddam's forces suffered a heavy defeat, he managed to maintain his hold on power within Iraq. After the war, he unleashed violent crackdowns on internal uprisings, particularly in Shiite and Kurdish areas. Thousands were killed as Saddam sought to reassert control, using the full force of his military to crush any signs of rebellion. These brutal suppressions only solidified Saddam's reputation as a dictator who would stop at nothing to retain power, even in the face of international opposition and military defeat. After the Gulf War, Saddam's defiance of international sanctions and his alleged attempts to develop weapons of mass destruction made him a continued source of global concern. UN weapons inspectors were repeatedly blocked or limited in their investigations, fueling suspicions that Iraq was secretly developing chemical, biological, or possibly nuclear weapons. Saddam's refusal to comply with inspection protocols intensified international pressure, leading to years of strained diplomacy and escalating tension with Western nations, particularly the United States. The standoff culminated in 2003 when, after years of accusations and unheeded warnings, a US-led coalition invaded Iraq. The official justification centered on Iraq's suspected WMDs and Saddam's alleged ties to terrorist organizations, claims that were later questioned but underscored the pervasive fear that Saddam had instilled far beyond Iraq's borders. The invasion marked the beginning of the end for Saddam Hussein's regime. After decades in power, Saddam's grip on Iraq unraveled swiftly with the US-led invasion in March 2003. By April, coalition forces had taken Baghdad, and Saddam, once a symbol of absolute authority, had vanished. His sudden disappearance created suspense and speculation across Iraq and beyond. In Baghdad, a city shaped by Saddam's image and influence, his luxurious palaces stood eerily empty, looted, and abandoned. The city's residents, many of whom had known no leader other than Saddam, faced a surreal new reality, one in which their former leader had seemingly evaporated. Rumors of Saddam's sightings spread like wildfire. Some claimed he had fled to Syria or another country, while others believed he had gone underground, possibly protected by loyal tribal members. Yet despite numerous leads, Saddam proved elusive, and his ability to evade capture, even as Iraq was flooded with foreign troops, became a frustrating reality for the coalition forces. He remained a phantom presence. The U.S. military and the coalition recognized that apprehending Saddam would mark a turning point, both to symbolically end his reign of fear and to prevent him from potentially rallying support to destabilize the new Iraq. As the coalition forces intensified their search, they employed an innovative tool to streamline their efforts: the Most Wanted deck of cards, a concept designed to simplify the capture of Saddam and his closest associates. Saddam was designated as the Ace of Spades, representing the highest priority target, while each card in the deck depicted a member of his inner circle, from ministers to military commanders, all crucial in dismantling his regime. For U.S. soldiers and coalition forces, the deck of cards became an essential tool, allowing them to recognize key figures on site. The cards emphasized the methodical nature of the mission. Each capture, each eliminated card, represented progress towards dismantling a regime built on fear. After nearly 9 months of fruitless searches and dead ends, a critical breakthrough occurred. Coalition forces had conducted hundreds of raids and interrogated countless individuals with ties to Saddam's former regime. This persistent intelligence gathering finally yielded a promising lead. U.S. forces obtained valuable information from a former driver and personal guard of Saddam's, who, under intense pressure, disclosed a possible hiding location near the village of Ad-Dur, close to Tikrit, Saddam's birthplace, and a region long loyal to him. Armed with this intelligence, the coalition prepared for Operation Red Dawn, a high-stakes mission meticulously planned to ensure success. The operation, named after the 1984 film about guerrilla resistance, involved extensive reconnaissance, careful intelligence analysis, and precise military planning. 2 target sites were identified, codenamed Wolverine 1 and Wolverine 2. On December 13, 2003, coalition forces moved into position, each soldier acutely aware of the historical implications of their mission. The operation was carried out with heightened tension, as soldiers knew that a single misstep could allow Saddam to escape once again. As they combed the area of Tikrit, the troops' patience and precision paid off. At one of the locations, they discovered a small concealed hole covered with dirt and debris, a spider hole, in which Saddam had hidden. The entrance was well camouflaged and designed to blend seamlessly into the landscape. Inside, they found a disheveled and exhausted Saddam Hussein, armed with a pistol, but offering no resistance. The man who had ruled Iraq with an iron fist was now huddled in a cramped underground hideaway. As he was apprehended, soldiers noted that Saddam looked wary and defeated. The images of Saddam's capture circulated rapidly. For Iraqi citizens, especially those who had suffered under his regime, the sight of Saddam in custody offered a sense of relief and vindication. In Baghdad, jubilant crowds took to the streets, tearing down posters of Saddam and celebrating the fall of the man who had ruled their lives through intimidation and violence. Following his capture, Saddam was transported to Baghdad to face trial. Many legal experts voiced their concerns over whether the trial could genuinely adhere to the Geneva Convention's standards for the treatment of prisoners, especially in a country gripped by deep divisions and anger towards the former dictator. In the months leading up to the trial, preparations were underway amid protests, both from those who had suffered under Saddam's rule and from those who feared that a hasty trial might undermine the credibility of Iraq's fledgling justice system. When the trial finally commenced, Saddam Hussein adopted a stance that shocked both his supporters and detractors. Far from showing remorse or submission, Saddam exuded defiance, standing in the courtroom as if it were his own platform rather than a place of judgment. From the start, he questioned the legitimacy of the tribunal, dismissing it as a construct of the American occupiers and accusing it of political bias. He famously argued that the trial was nothing more than a show orchestrated by President George W. Bush and his allies, aiming to undermine Iraq's sovereignty and humiliate its former leader. The defiance didn't end there. Saddam repeatedly clashed with judges, his confrontational posture unsettling court proceedings and occasionally drawing murmurs of support from those who still saw him as a symbol of Iraqi strength. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, violence was escalating. Saddam's legal team faced threats, with several of his defense attorneys killed in targeted attacks, intensifying concerns over the trial's fairness and security. The threats and escalating tension made it clear that the trial was more than a legal proceeding. It was a reflection of Iraq's deeply fractured state, where any semblance of due process struggled to stand against a backdrop of vengeance and unrest. The central focus of Saddam's trial was his role in the Dujail massacre, a tragic episode that underscored the brutality of his regime. It unfolded in July 1982, following an assassination attempt against Saddam during his visit to the predominantly Shiite town of Dujail. The attack, which resulted in minor injuries to Saddam, prompted an overwhelming response from his government, determined to eradicate any hint of dissent. In the aftermath of the assassination attempt, Saddam ordered a large-scale crackdown on the town. Security forces descended on Dujail, arresting over 140 men and boys, many of whom were accused of having ties to opposition groups or simply of being part of the community that had shown hostility towards the regime. The brutality of their treatment was extreme. The repercussions for the town were catastrophic. Families were torn apart, and entire households suffered under the weight of state-sanctioned violence. Many of those arrested were executed without trial, their only crime being their association with Dujail. In the courtroom, survivors of Dujail recounted their memories of that dark period. The testimonies were harrowing, shedding light on the personal cost of Saddam's unyielding rule. For these victims, this trial was a rare opportunity to confront the man responsible for their suffering. It was this atrocity, along with the overwhelming evidence presented by prosecutors, that ultimately led to Saddam's death sentence. On November 5, 2006, Saddam Hussein was sentenced to death by hanging, a sentence that was met with both celebration and controversy. The verdict was swift, and despite appeals from his defense team, his execution was scheduled for December 30, 2006. The day arrived amid an atmosphere of tension and anticipation. A mobile phone recording of the execution soon spread globally, showing Saddam's final moments. Saddam's trial left a divided legacy. Was his execution the justice Iraq needed, or a hasty act driven by political interests? For many, the answer remains ambiguous. Despite Saddam's death, many from his regime remain unpunished. True justice for his victims feels incomplete, and Iraq is left grappling with the remnants of a painful past.